So we're going to wrap up some of the things we talked about last night, and some of you came and asked questions that prompted me to realize I had not brought to a decent closure some of the things that I mentioned last night. One, for example, is in the book of Revelation, the word Almighty occurs many, many, many times in the last book of the New Testament, and the question was, does it have the same significance there? Does Almighty? And the answer is no. And I wish I had mentioned this last night. What we have in the Old Testament, when you see Almighty, what is that? What's the Hebrew word? Shaddai, right? Shaddai. And we indicated that it always occurs in the context of what in the Old Testament? Fertility, okay? And the God who gives fertility can also take it away. In the book of Deuteronomy, he says, if you do what I ask you to do, I will send the rains. Your crops will multiply. If you don't do what I ask, I will withhold the rains from the sky, and your crops will diminish. You'll have plague. So this is Shaddai. When we get to the New Testament, they don't use the word Shaddai because it's Greek, so we have a new language there, and it literally is Almighty. It really does mean that. It means all powerful. So when you get to the New Testament and you see the word Almighty, this is one of these things where you have to put a little switch on in your head, say, okay, I'm moving from one culture to another. This is the culture of ancient Israel. Now we're in the culture of the Roman Empire. We are in the Roman province of Judea. Those are two different cultures entirely. I have to do this a couple of times. I think one thing we've mentioned before was with regard to the term sons of God. What does that mean in the Old Testament? What does it mean in the New Testament? By the way, that's really kind of cool because it goes with, something we're going to be talking about with respect to another name of God in just a moment. There is a connection between the two, but we have to maintain that very important distinction. Secondly, one little point that I think is kind of neat, maybe I don't think I mentioned this, but if you go back into the book of Genesis and take a look at Genesis chapter 30, Genesis 39. Genesis 39, verse 23. Would somebody read that, please? This is in the story of Joseph. Okay, who is with Joseph? What's that? Yahweh. Okay, Yahweh. Now, what's interesting about this, and there are no red flags that are flashing around this verse. It's one of these things that you can read the Bible and you don't even notice this. This is the last time that the name Yahweh appears in the book of Genesis. When Joseph goes down to Egypt, the brothers have treacherously betrayed their brother, and they almost killed him, remember? And there is a reason why the name Elohim will appear all the way. But what's happened to the relationship between the family of Jacob and God? What's that? Oh, man. And one way that this is signaled is that's the last time that Yahweh appears in the story. Elohim appears not Yahweh. The brothers have betrayed Joseph. They go down to Egypt. They leave Canaan. While they are in Egypt, what happens down there in Egypt? Pharaoh's going to oppress them? It is bad news. Yahweh is not there in the name Yahweh. He's there as Elohim. The relationship. And by the way, so when's the next time Yahweh appears? Take a look in Exodus chapter 3. In Exodus chapter 3, would somebody read for me in verse 2? Nice and loud, Exodus 3:2. In fact, where's Talitha? Talitha, can you read Exodus 3:2 for us? The angel of who? Keep going. This is the next time that Yahweh appears. Talitha, can you tell me what's happening here? What's new? First time he uses his name, and how is this event a major departure? Yeah, God is talking to Moses, And he's keep going. You were gonna say something, Ricky? And what's gonna happen at the bush? He's gonna say, Moses, you go back to Egypt, bring my people out. And by the way, it's really fascinating when you read this chapter, Exodus 3, the breach in the relationship is very clear because Moses, as you read through this, Moses says, okay, so you want me to go tell this people that I'm supposed to take them out of Egypt. Who shall I say sent me? Do you remember that? Moses doesn't know. He doesn't know God's name. Moses says, who shall I say sent me? So God has to start all over again. Because why? Yahweh has not been mentioned since Joseph went down to Egypt a couple hundred years before. So Moses is on a learning curve. Who shall I say sent me? So he has to explain, my name is Yahweh. He explains, okay, you guys have forgotten all this stuff. So I just want to underscore, watch the tracking of these divine names because they will tell you changing relationships. There's another one. We mentioned that Shaddai may come from what are the two possible roots that it may come from? Mountain or breasts, okay? Probably the latter is because of the context. But it is intriguing. We have noted that God typically reveals himself where? On mountains. And just for maybe 3 minutes, one of you asked me a question about some mountains. Some of the mountains we hear about are Sinai, Mount Horeb, Mount Carmel, Mount Zion. A very interesting connection between these that I think a lot of people miss is that when we have the name Horeb, we have the name Horeb. This is one of the names for Mount Sinai, okay? It's the same mountain. Mount Horeb is Mount Sinai. What does Horeb mean? It's kind of like a nickname for the mountain, and it means dry. Mount Dry. That's what Horeb means. Mount Dry. And when we come to the other mountain that God reveals himself on, Mount Zion, where is Mount Zion? It's in Jerusalem. Actually, Jerusalem is where? On Mount Zion. Okay, so this is a mountain. And the peculiar thing about Mount Zion, and it seems to be this is the reason why God chose Mount Zion, is that Zion also means dry. These are actually, they're when I say dry, these two particular words are there's a standard word for dry, which appears in Genesis 1, the dry land, and the dry land appeared. Dry land, it just means there's no water. These two words means it is a blasted waste. Both of them, a blasted waste. That's what these two words mean, both of them. This is related to the word for a sword. You know, you just go in and you just wreak havoc, okay? And this is a place where not even a cactus will grow, okay? When you get down into the Sinai is a place where when the Bedouin, and this is actually true, I've actually seen this, where if a Bedouin finds even just a small blade of grass, 2 or 3 little blades of grass, it's like they protect that. Nothing grows there in the Sinai. And so you have blasted waste, Mount Blasted Waste. There's a connection between the two. What is this all about? This is basically the picture of God taking a fallen world and he redeems it. And when you go to Mount Zion, what you find is God says someday there are going to be rivers of water that are going to be flowing from Mount Zion. Read the book of Ezekiel, the end of the book of Ezekiel, the last 2-3 chapters. Ezekiel sees this vision of these waters flowing from Mount what? Mount Dry. This is what God is in the business of doing, turning deserts into watered places, turning death into life. So does that answer your question about Mount Zion a little bit? No. People are never called Zion. People are never called Zion. Mount Zion is a mountain, and Jerusalem is built on top of it. And by the way, if when you read through your Bible, you're going to find that this is one of the problems with Mount Zion, is that they have to bring water from outside the city and they have to bring it in underground tunnels. Uh, uh, Dallas, yeah, you've walked through that tunnel, right? Hezekiah's tunnel. What's that about? Yeah, how long is it? Yeah, and it's huge, and through the solid rock, right? And it's bringing water from where? From the spring that's outside, inside, so that people have access to it. Yes. At Sinai, there are a couple. We're not really sure where Mount Sinai is. It may be the most likely possibility. It's still dry. Okay, and Mount Zion, it's still dry. The only way that water has to be piped into it. Yeah. So yes, Psalm 15. When you're talking about who shall dwell on your holy hill, talking about Mount Zion. And, the question there really doesn't address the issue of it being dry. Okay, it's more a moral issue. Who's going to be able to who can come to the temple? Okay. So, we've looked at a couple of issues then from last night. There was another issue that popped up with the name Adon, which means what? Lord or master. Yeah, I find it preferable to say master because with the word Lord, it sounds too much like a uh, a class of people in England who are royalty, okay? And that's not what this word means. The word is a master, somebody who you do what they ask you to do. And it's not necessarily that you're a slave. It's simply this is like a teacher-student relationship. Okay, this is what a rabbi, for example. What does that mean? It means great one. This is the similar to the word for a master. So I prefer to say master because Lord has kind of lost its connotation for us. And if I say master, it means I do what you say, Jesus. So when we have this word Adon, when we have this word Adon, um, when we get to the New Testament, here's an interesting problem. So here, if we read in the Old Testament, Lord, that means what? Okay, I heard two answers. What is it? In the Old Testament. Whoa, no, 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 no. Okay, I have not been fair. I should put the other option up there. So now,
Yeah.
so which one is master here, Layla? Master is left. Yahweh's right. Okay, so very clear distinction, and except unless your Bible has problem, and again we even see this right. Capital God is what? Yahweh. Um, when you have this is what? Elohim. Very good. Okay, you guys always one step ahead of me. Okay, so we've got this clear presentation. Sure, you know what the word is behind it. When you get to the New Testament, when you see this, what is that? I hear a lot of questions. Well, yeah, this is a problem, and it is a serious problem. There are English translations do not make the distinction. The Greek does. And it's something that has not been picked up. I think I found one translation which tries to do it, but they don't even do this consistently. What's the problem? This can be either this or this, and the writers of the New Testament knew the difference, and they actually preserved it. Let me show you how. When the Jews in the Old Testament translated the Bible, they would translate this by, oh, I think you know this word. What's that? Which means what? What's theology? Study of God. Theos is God. Okay, so Greek translators translated that as theos, and when it came to this word, okay, watch carefully now. They translated it by kurios. You ever heard kurios before? Let's all say it. Kurios. You will often hear in the Catholic Church, various liturgies will say Kyrie eleison, Lord have mercy on us. Okay, kurios. Say it again. Kurios. It means Lord, Master, Lord, Master. When the Jews were translating Yahweh, they wanted to make sure that in the Greek translation, you could tell the difference. And so what they did was they translated kurios, or they translated Lord as kurios, but they did something special. And that was when you translate, let's say, the master, as in God is the master, Adonai, you would typically put in front of it the definite article, the Lord, the Lord. That's how you knew it was the master, the Lord. You put the definite, you know what I mean by the definite article? The. When they translated this, they did not use the definite article. And so it sounded like bad Greek. And you knew what? It was the personal name of God. Okay? So in the New Testament, they carried this over. And when they quote, for example, the Old Testament, and it's this or this, it will depend on whether they put the definite article in front of the master, kurios, or they'll just say kurios without the definite article, and you know it refers to who? Yahweh. I don't want to spend a lot of time on this, but I want to show you an amazing verse that is stunning, that completely goes over our radar screen in the book of Philippians, to show you an example. By the way, this happens regularly. Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, they will talk about Jesus as, take a guess, the master. I mean, do they know who he is until the resurrection? No, they're still trying to figure this out. So they call him what? The master. And so when you're talking to Jesus, the disciples talking to Jesus, they will say, Hakurios, the master, the master, the master. Yeah. Kurios, yes. There's no difference. The only difference is the I at the end means my Lord. Okay. So so they regularly make this distinction. Usually Jesus is described in the Gospels as the master, the master, the master said this, the master needs a donkey, the master, the master. But take a look in the book of Philippians. This is so stunning. In Philippians chapter 2, would somebody begin reading in verse 9? By the way, they're talking about what here? What's the subject? God's. Read the verse again. Okay. He's talking about God's name. Okay. That's what we're talking about. Okay, same verse. Keep reading. And every tongue should confess that Jesus Christ is what? Is what? Is Lord. And guess what? It does not have the definite article. That is one of the most amazing affirmations of the deity of Jesus. Paul knows the distinction. And this is kind of the problem with using the word Lord, because when we say Lord, yeah, it's too diffuse in its meaning. And unfortunately, I have not found any translations that make this distinction here. Is that cool? It's not just confess that Jesus is Lord, which is a really pretty vague term if you stop thinking about it for us, because we don't have lords in our culture, do we? No. In fact, we deny that relationship. But for you to say Jesus Christ is, I mean, those are fighting words that Paul is putting in there. And so anyway, any other questions on that? Yes. So kurios is the Greek word for Lord. Adonai is the Hebrew word for Lord. Adonai or Adon and Kuris. So we have two different cultures. And so when we make the transition from one to the other, the question somebody asked was, how do you know in the New Testament if it's Yahweh or Lord? Very often, not always, but very often they make the distinction. If it has the definite article, it's the master. If it does not have the definite article, oh yeah, you do this all the time. Like, the servant of the master was healed. Yeah. I mean, this is a normal everyday word for the master. Okay. Give me an example. Show me a verse. If you find the definite, and by the way, this is often a problem also, but I think in this particular place, in this passage, where Paul uses the definite article, it's his way of saying, we are whose disciples? We are Jesus' disciples. We are his followers, which means we do what he asks. Okay? And so Paul will very often, in fact, usually he stresses this because this was the relationship of the apostles to Jesus. They are sent by the master. Okay? That happened quite regularly. Our Lord Jesus Christ. What does that mean? Our master, Jesus Christ. It's the same thing that goes on in the Old Testament. Sometimes you refer to him as Yahweh, sometimes you refer to him as master. Same thing. There's not any different. Again, it depends on the relationship that you want to stress. If Paul, when he writes his letters, I got news for you. Most of the time, Paul's writing his letters to tell you what you guys need to do, right? And that means the master. This is what the master has said. This is what the master has told us to do. So I would expect in most of Paul's messages, he's going to be talking about the boss, and you're the employee. This is what you need to do.
So would you say yesterday you were saying how Yahweh was most personal name to call the Lord? Would you say that calling him Father would be more personal?
In many ways, it is. And the Old Testament, do people call God Father?
In the Old Testament.
No, they don't. No, they don't. Because the people in the Old Testament are not a part of God's family. They're the sons of Israel. They're the sons of who? Israel, the sons of Jacob. That's a human father. Who are the sons of God? The angels. Okay. In the New Testament, we get adopted into God's family. There is a major revolution that takes place. And so that distinction is very important. Make sense? Yes. As I said, I have found one translation. I'm trying to remember what it was. There's one translation. Who did it? There's one translation where they try to do it, but they're not consistent, and which is baffling because they seem to be on target for this. But this is common knowledge for people who read the Septuagint. And then when you read the Septuagint, it's like it happens everywhere. You can tell, oh, this is Yahweh. This is Yahweh. This is not Yahweh, depending on the presence or absence of the definite article. When you come to the New Testament, it's like, oh, deja vu. This is the same thing. Why this is so, if you stop and think about it, what was the Bible of the church up until 500 years ago? What was the Bible of the church? No, I'm sorry, what language was the Bible of the church in? Latin. Okay? Everybody's reading Latin, at least in the West. Okay? Everybody in the Western church, the Catholic Church, Latin. Guess what? Latin has no definite article. Latin has no definite article. What does that do to this distinction? It erases it. So that's the heritage that we have. If now in the Eastern Church, Greek Orthodox, of course they know this, but they don't translate the Bible for us. We have the Eastern Orthodox Church, is not accepted by the Catholic Church. So we've cut off that tradition. I don't know if that answers your question. I think that should help. Yeah. The first translations of the Bible in Europe were from Latin.
They didn't look at all of it?
The Bible began to be translated from Greek. The first one is the time of Martin Luther, Erasmus, and he only had like 5 or 6 Greek manuscripts in front of him. And that's the basis of the King James Bible, by the way. It's 5 or 6 Greek manuscripts. And that was new. It was new. Okay. So you see that this is why it's very important for us to go back to the sources, isn't it? Go back, bypass the Vulgate, the Latin, and go back. Just a little definite article. Isn't that amazing? Latin doesn't have it, and all the havoc that wreaks in subsequent understanding. It's not the master. It's not everyone's. And as you read it, it sounds like everyone's going to confess that Jesus Christ is the guy in charge. It's like no. He is Yahweh. So, whoa, that's stunning. Okay, any other questions on that before we move on, Jordan? This is another thing that's like. In fact, that was something that I said early on in my life. I said I would never partake in another translation. I've been asked to do some translations. The NET, the NET Bible said, nope, I committed when I was young. I said, there's just too many translations. And sometimes people say, well, why don't you make the definitive translation? You can't. You can't. There's no such thing because there are parts of the Bible where it can go one of two ways. And in many ways, it's difficult to decide. So some translations will go one way, some will go another way. And that's why when you read the Bible, it's not a bad idea to have two or three in front of you as you read. And if you find, especially two or three that are not always going to be in agreement, because if they are in agreement, you can be confident. But if you see some, like, well, they translated it a little differently, that should give you cause to say, why? And then you can not be, you might not say things that you might regret later. Well, again, that's kind of the issue because there are going to be some words that are going to be susceptible to a number of different meanings, and it's legitimate. Like the other day, we were talking about, could 100 kids beat up a Nephilim? Okay, all right. So you have to ask the. Remember we did that? Remember it? Okay, so the question is, well, what's a Nephilim? And some people say, well, it's some guy that's 10 feet tall. Some people say, well, it's somebody that's a mile tall. Well, so you got a problem with definition in arguing that case. So when it comes to the Bible, you may find a word that you go, do we really know what this word means? And that's a problem. Oh, yes. So you will find that most translations that are done today are translating from the Hebrew, translating from the NIV would be translating from the Hebrew and the Greek. Yeah. Most translations now do that. I appreciate you asking that, Ricky. The one thing that I do not want to happen is for you to say, "Oh, I can't say anything about the Bible." No, you do not go there, okay? One thing that I have found is that God can take a paraphrase like the Living Bible or the Message. Do you know those? Those are paraphrases, okay? Can you use those Bibles to study? No, I hope not. Good. I'm glad you're shaking your head. You don't want to study the Message or the New Living Bible or the, the Living Bible because they're so loose that it's highly interpretive. Okay, but I have seen God take the Message or the Living Bible and have His truth change people's lives. Okay, so you never want to say to somebody, "Oh, get rid of that Bible," okay, and the Message or Living Bible or whatever. Get rid of that. It's no good. No, 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 no. Can God use the most uneducated person to bring someone else into the kingdom? Yes. And he could do the same thing with any Bible. God has promised, and remember in the book of Isaiah, my word will not return to me void. It will not return back to me empty. It's going to produce something. Okay. Now, our job is to be as accurate as we can. And once we've reached that point where we've encountered the resurrected Jesus, we read the Bible and we know there's so much more to talk about, we have absolute confidence that the Holy Spirit is going to take his word, no matter how feeble the words are that we use. He's going to direct it to the hearts of people. So, Ricky, don't ever feel like you have to back off because I don't really know. You speak what you know. Okay? You speak what you know. And that's how John opens his first letter. That which we have seen, that which we have heard, that which we have handled of the word of life. Okay? John says, that's what we pass on to you. Did John know everything about Jesus? Were there a lot of things he did not understand? Yeah, but he says, that which we have heard, that which we have seen, that which we have handled of the word of life, we teach to you. So you do the same thing, no matter what your level is. So, and if I can make then a second step, so that means as good stewards of God, we want to be in the Word on a regular basis. We want to be in a good translation. And as I said, it's not a bad idea to have just two side by side. And that way you can be alerted if they both agree, it's like, hey, man, these are two publications that went into print, so they must be very confident. Okay, find two translations. You find that there's a little bit of a disagreement, and you realize, oh, then I have to get what book? The C word, the concordance, the second most valuable book that you can carry with you to a desert island, along with Lord of the Rings and Dante, right? So you take your concordance, Ricky. If you find that, and you do a hunt, what does that word mean? If you're really serious. What does that word mean? And I would say then the next most valuable thing would be to have a good Bible dictionary. A good Bible. Who was it that has who had the portable Bible dictionary? Was it you, Sydney? Yeah. She's got this, and it helps, doesn't it?
Oh, yeah.
And you carry it in your purse, don't you?
I mean, I carry it.
You carry it with you. So those are the single most important things you can do to investigate things on your own so that you don't feel adrift at sea of ignorance. No, you can build. And by the way, I'm in the latter part of my life. I am still learning things. And I say to myself, I wish I had known that 50 years ago. Okay. That's inevitable. I'm going to die with unanswered questions. Doesn't prevent me from speaking what I have seen, what I have heard, what I have handled of the word of life.
So I was looking up at the library and there's a ton of different commentaries. How do I know which commentary is good?
And that's a good question. I think some of you have asked me this, and I always tell my students at the university, commentary is the last place that you go. Why? Does anybody remember the reason I gave? Somebody's opinion, and it could be a good opinion. It could be, but the problem is what it does with your eyes is it makes your eyes do this. You only see what that commentary tells you to see. And once you see what that commentary sees, you can't see anything else. It is so refreshing to let the Bible speak. There's not a problem with commentaries, not a problem, but it would be the last place that I would go. So does that answer your question? Yeah. And there are commentaries that are better than others. I think one of you asked me, what are some good commentaries? And like in the case of the book of Leviticus, there's one commentary that's just superior. And I have a list of what are the best commentaries. And I said I would email this to the student. Maybe if you send me an email, I'll do the same. I'll send you. But I see it some. Yeah, what is the best commentary that I would recommend for each book? There's some books that really don't even have a good commentary, unfortunately. Yeah. Yes.
You like
Yeah, concordances are over on that section over there. And your word studies and things like that, and your commentaries are right up there. Dictionaries are over there. Unless somebody's relocated them. I've noticed many books that have been moved. Okay, any other questions? So let me just do another couple of names of God. Is that okay? Have we got a little more time? How much more time do we have? Did you say 10, 15, 20? 15? Okay. Okay. Real quick, take a look, if you will. Take a look in Isaiah chapter 40. Isaiah chapter 40. Would somebody tell me? Actually, you could read in Isaiah chapter 40, verse 25, in its entirety. Wow, what's the name of God that's here? The Holy One. And this is in Hebrew. This is the word kadosh. Can you say that? Have you heard that before? This is, by the way, this is Isaiah's favorite word for God. Is it any accident that, remember in Isaiah 6, when he stands in the throne room of God, the seraphim are saying what? What are they saying? I need all three. Kadosh, kadosh, kadosh. It's not any accident, because for Isaiah to call God the Holy One, kadosh, is most emphatic for him. No other prophet does this apart from. This is all Old Testament's Hebrew. So when you have this, yeah. So when we have, take a look also, go back to Isaiah chapter 1, verse 4. Notice how he starts off his book. Isaiah 1, verse 4. What does he say? Have you got that, Ella? Read the whole thing. Oh, no. This is 1:4. So right from the very beginning, he says, Israel has despised Yahweh. They turn their back on what? The Kadosh, the Holy One. And this repeats as you go through Isaiah. Just watch. He does. Look in verse 24. Notice that, verse 24. Just over and over and over. He just loves this. What does verse 24 say? Thus says the Lord God of hosts, the mighty one of Israel. Oh, is that verse 24? I thought, was it? Oh, the mighty one. No, that's mighty one of Israel. What's that? Is it 21?
No.
Oh, yeah. There's a lot of these. Anyway, As you go through the book of Isaiah, you see Holy One, the Holy One, the Holy One. What is one of the designations? Remember, Elohim refers to what? Both God and angels, okay? You want to take a guess what one of the names for the angels is? But the plural would be what? Kadoshim. You're good. Which would, in English, would be what? No, the Holy Ones. The Holy Ones. Take a look in the book of Daniel for a minute. Where's Daniel? Daniel occurs, you got Isaiah, Jeremiah, Ezekiel, and then Daniel. In the book of Daniel, everybody there? Daniel chapter 4, verse 13. Somebody read that, please. Yeah, by the way, here's another kind of angelic category we have not discussed. These are the watchers. The watchers. They only occur in the book of Daniel, watchers. But he's called a what? A holy one. He's not called the Holy One, is he? He's called a Holy One. Who is the Holy One? So once again, we have this very interesting distinction. He is the Holy One. He is the Elohim. Okay? So let me ask you this. When you come across the term holy ones in the Old Testament, or the saints, saint means holy one. That's what saint means, okay? And again, that comes from the Latin Bibles. You got saint. So if you see in the Old Testament the saints or the holy ones, depending upon your translation, who's it referring to? Angels. Angels, okay? Who does holy ones refer to in the New Testament? Again, you notice the same distinction, okay? Is that crazy? Now, here's the trick. In the Old Testament, the holy ones are holy ones by definition from the get-go. God never says to his angels, okay, guys, be holy. What does he say to humans regularly in the Old Testament? Be holy because I am holy. Humans, you need to learn to be holy, okay? So this is really an amazing big picture phenomenon we've got. Angels and God, same category. They're the holy ones. God is the holy one. By the way, can angels sin? Yeah, but they are the holy ones by definition, as is God. God tells humans in the Old Testament, be holy as I am. Why can God say to them, be holy as I am holy? Because in Genesis 1, God created man in his image. Difference is we have got these bodies, okay, that need to be redeemed. We've got these, remember Paul in Romans 8 says, we are waiting for the redemption of the sons of God. Ooh, wow, there it is, the sons of God. We are in that same category, and we have been made holy by the death of Jesus. That's why we are partakers with the angelic hosts. This is stunning. The holy ones in the Old Testament, the holy ones in the New Testament. Yes, you had a question? That's a very good question. You will often hear that holy is supposed to mean what? Okay. It does not mean set apart. Okay. Never, never, never is that word ever used to set something apart. Okay. We have plenty of words in Hebrew or Greek to set things apart. There are lots of words. Oh, in Genesis 1, it says, and God divided the light from the dark. He separated them, okay, made them separate. Lots of words. Holy is not. Holy is something, it is a quality that is reserved only for the divine. Reserved only for the divine. What it refers to, it's basically the way of saying this is divine. That's what holy means. So when you are told to be holy, you are told to become like God. Okay? That's what holy means. It is a peculiar quality that belongs to God, the supernatural world. Okay? That's what it means to be holy. Now, in order to be like that, do you have to separate yourself? Yeah, you do. But it's not the word to separate things, like to divide the boys from the girls. That doesn't mean to make separate, okay? It means to become like God. Yeah. The God of hosts, armies is Tsava. Tsaba. Well, how about if we leave with that? There are certainly more names for God, but we can leave with that one because that gives us a challenge, doesn't it? God has said, be holy. We have an amazing cloud of witnesses around us. The invisible angelic helpers who are watching us, they are holy ones, aren't they? And they're looking at us, and their job is to help us become what? Holy. And they're excited when they see Joshua students motivated to become holy. What do I call God? It depends. There have been, there was a couple in Columbus last year that was they had a baby, and they were trying to have a baby. Finally, they had a baby. And I addressed God when I prayed for them every day. I addressed God as Shaddai. Wow, is that cool? Because then they become a part of a tradition of God making life possible from Genesis to the present. So yeah, I address God as Shaddai. Are there times I address him as Adon? Yes, my Lord, Adonai, my Lord. When I've got a task to fulfill, I call him Adonai. Uh, Father is my most common, okay? And fathers we talked about earlier, that is something new because now we have joined the ranks of the redeemed, and we're in the family of God. That's the one I usually default to, when I'm talking to God as Father, certainly. But use all of these names because God glories. Look, when my wife was alive, by the way, oh, this is really cool. I haven't shared this with anybody else. When my wife would write me these napkins, okay, um, she would always address me differently. I wouldn't say always, but I never noticed it until she died. And then I started going through these napkins, and I've actually started making a list of all the things that she would call me as she introduced the letter. I have got a list that there's at least 50 different ways that she addressed it. Some I can't share. But so, do you know what? She could have addressed me in every one of them as Sam. That would be one, because that's my name. But because she creatively thought through all these different manifestations of our relationship, every one of them touches a different chord.
Wow.
And hey, I don't know if you remember the book of Revelation, God says that when you get to heaven, you're going to have a stone and you're going to have a name on it that is unique to you. There are a lot of Beths, but guess what? There's only going to be one Beth with that future name on that stone. God is giving you specific names. What's a specific name you can give to God that is unique between you and him that nobody else? What's that? Anyway, I don't mean that flippantly. That is, I'm just blown away by my wife's creativity because I was so uncreative. She is. I'm so uncreative, and this is like a. But I use that as an illustration to show we've only looked at a couple names. There are many other names for God in the Bible.
How many?
Oh, it depends on how you count. It depends on how you count. Yeah. Oh, if that's the way you feel, that is no problem. But you remember that Jesus went around and he said to Simon, Simon, you're Peter. He gives Peter a new name. Yeah, he says, hey, Peter, I want you to be a rock. Whoa, that's something Peter can live up to. Got this, and by the way, that's the name for God. We haven't talked about rock. My rock, my salvation, my rock. What do people go around calling? That's your name for God, rock. It comes right out of the Bible. It's not that you have to make up new names, but I'm simply saying, if we have a monochrome picture, and we always refer to God as God, that's okay. But the relationship could be so much more colorful, magnificent. Yeah. Give him a name that you can grow with. And yeah, no. Yeah. Other unique names that appear in the New Testament. Yeah, you do. Yeah, there are some in the New Testament. Yeah. So here's an example to answer your question. What does Abraham do when God provides the sacrifice in place of Isaac? He backs off and he gives God a new name. He says, El Roi, the God who sees. And that is not a name that is used anyplace else in the Bible. It's only there. It was that event. And Abraham says, El Roi, the God who provides. And that is not seen as blasphemous. Rather, God sees this as the child expressing his thankfulness. And that's a connection I think that might help with that. Yeah, it's not so much that we're naming God as that we're affirming a special relationship that we have seen. I think we probably need to close off. If you have any other questions, maybe we could talk about it. Okay, great.